Hi, my name is Abigale Stangl, and I'm presenting the paper Going Beyond One-Size-Fits-All Image Descriptions to Satisfy the Information Wants of People Who Are Blind or Have Low Vision. I'm presenting on behalf of Nitin Verma, Kenneth Fleischmann, Meredith Morris, and Danna Gurari, and this work is funded by Microsoft Research and the University of Texas at Austin, the School of Information. So image descriptions or alt text are vital to making digital images accessible to people who are blind or who have low vision. And they're important to include in images posted on social media, embedded in websites, on e-publications, and elsewhere. But prior work has focused on developing strategies to support developers and social media users to author alt text and descriptions. These include templates, other tools for authoring descriptions by image type, and sample cues and games to aid in image description. But because many images don't include human annotated or human descriptions, vision to language services are important. These services automatically generate image descriptions by using artificial intelligence. So here's an example of an image, and the description says a group of people posing for a photo. But there are 6 people and they're smiling and they're standing side by side and they're standing in a university setting. So that's some important information. Another challenge is represented in this image of a man standing on a beach with some seaweed and kids playing in bright blue water, where the image description simply says, beach, fun, family, free, stock, photo, public, domain pictures. More broadly, image description services have not been trained with input from people who are blind. And inaccurate descriptions can put people in dangerous situations, misrepresent a person's identity, and create bias. And the current one-size-fits-all image description paradigm means that these descriptions aren't responsive to where an image is found and possibly other contextual factors. So HCI researchers have been conducting studies and work to really involve people who are blind in the process of identifying what their information wants are and towards training automated image description services. Some of these focus on specific media types including GIFs, which Cole Gleason has explored. Cindy Bennett has focused on different content types, including race, gender, and disability. And my work with my colleagues has focused on really looking at how the source of an image influences a person's content wants. So we extend this prior work and ask, what influence do scenarios as a contextual factor have on the content people who are blind and low vision want in image descriptions? And so, in this, we're thinking about, well, extending the current paradigm that doesn't really include the scenario or the person's information goal in the interpretation process, and whether or not it's feasible to then create context-aware image descriptions. So to address this, we had interviews with 20 people who are blind, and we asked them, what content would you like in a description for the image based on the scenario we presented you with? And we presented them with 5 images and 5 scenarios. For each image, we presented them with a base image description, an opportunity for them to ask visual questions, and then to consider what content was most relevant to them for the scenario. And so we had 25 image scenario combination responses from each participant and 700 total responses. So again, just to say, the descriptions that we provided were structured in a systematic way, following a progressive disclosure, and where we provided kind of overview first of the people, objects, activity, interaction, and environment. And then we provided more details about those elements for the images. The images include Bernie Sanders walking through a park, an image of an indoor living room, an image of a mountain scene where 2 people are overlooking it, a picture of a man standing in a bazaar near a t-shirt stall, and a person reaching onto a plate of Ethiopian food. So the scenarios, each scenario, again, incorporated information about the source of the image and the consumer's information goal. So for the first scenario, we presented people with this idea of, you encounter a digital image when visiting a news website to learn more about the working conditions specified in the article. And then we asked them to identify what content they thought they wanted from a specific image based off of that scenario. And we did that for 4 other scenarios, each of which had a different information source and different information goal. So we performed kind of an exploratory research and analysis on this data. First, we really were looking at kind of what themes, were there central themes or what people identified as most salient in the image. So here's a quote of somebody saying, I want to know who's in the picture. Who are they standing with? What season is it? I want to know about the trees being different colors. Is it autumn? I want to know that they're outside, the name of the river valley, the time of day, what they're doing in the picture. We also did a deductive term-based analysis where we parsed each participant's responses according to the explicit terms they used to specify their content wants. So looking at the inductive theme-based analysis, we really started to say, well, were there similar themes across all scenarios for a given image? And in fact, there were some similar ones, but more importantly, we saw that there was different content wants based on for each scenario, indicating that in fact, people who are blind want different content to be described based off of the information goal that they have and the source of the image. We further looked to see, well, do the scenario themes transcend the images? And we saw for just 2 of the scenarios that they did. For scenario A, we saw that our participants wanted to know the activity of the people for all the images that contained people in it. We also saw that they wanted to know the attributes of the workplace for this scenario. Some of the other scenarios, we didn't have as salient of findings, and we thought that it was possibly because we didn't provide enough detail in the scenario itself. For our deductive term-based analysis, we parsed the responses according to the terms. Here's a chart a table that just shows an aggregate of all the numbers of when we heard things for different scenarios according to people, environment, activity, interaction, and object categories. This doesn't really show us that much, but when we sort the responses according to how many scenarios we heard specific terms requested for a given image, we started to see a trend. So we saw under the category of people that for 5 scenarios, people wanted the name of the person, the clothing style, and the gender of the person described. And so this made us think, well, we can identify minimal viable image description content. So all in all, this work brings us closer towards context-aware image descriptions. So people don't have to search through a bunch of information to get what they're looking for to achieve a task. And it can be applied to training these new description services. And we're also advancing thoughts about how we can really improve the one-size-fits-all image descriptions and to be looking at how these MVP content wants can be used across scenarios. And finally, we want to refine the scenarios and the surrogate image descriptions, evaluate this method at scale with collections of similar images, and think about how to deliver additional information after we determine the minimal viable description. Thank you.